Welcome back to another episode of Raising the Digital Dead. Today we're finally going to break a bit of ground with me taking the new info provided by the ever-awesome Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California, and generating a new mock-up in cardboard of the Sol Intelligent Terminal case. Some folks have wondered why I'm starting with the case rather than the actual computer bits, and the truth is I'm kind of doing both concurrently. But as I said in a previous episode, the case is getting priority because I'm hoping its existence will keep me motivated to finish this project. Taking on a project of this scale requires a lot of discipline. There's a lot of ups and downs with long projects, a lot of stuff that you have to do to hunt for things. And ask anyone who's ever tried to restore a car. Well, you can see how well that worked out for me here. Having the case on my desk confronting me every day will keep me hungry for progress. It'll say, "Okay, Buster, where's my insides? Come on, man, make me do something interesting." So let's honor its imagined wishes, shall we? Plus, unlike the TV typewriter I built a few years back, this case is a fair bit more complex. I need to make sure I get it right, and I need to do much better by building a model first rather than simply sketching it out on paper. And thanks to Computer History Museum, I finally have some real measurement numbers and good quality photos to work with. As we've seen, Computer History Museum went out of their way to give me as much info as they could. It doesn't cover every part and piece, of course, but there's enough here to just figure out the broad picture, and the rest will be largely interpretation. I'm pretty confident in most of the main dimensions I've extrapolated from those photos. For example, I'm pretty sure the unit is about 21 inches wide between the wood panels. The wood itself, I think, is probably what's known as 5/4 inch thickness. The depth of the unit base pan is about 12 inches. We know the wood rises to a height of about 5¼ inches at the back, sloping down to, maybe about 2½ inches at the front. That's the easy stuff. Now, how to figure out everything else? Well, this is where having the real keyboard comes in handy, or at least one that's pretty much identical to it. Since I can measure the size of the keys, for example, if I want to know, say, how much plexiglass or acrylic space is between the wood and the keyboard, I can simply measure the real-life keys, and then I can use my CCP spyware tablet to scale up the photo in real life and measure out the actual dimensions. This tactic gives me some rough measurements on where the keyboard should be, as well as the tape deck. My tape deck has the exact same mounting hardware as the one in the prototype, so that really helps in figuring out how things align. Now, the curved plexiglass or acrylic top, that one's going to be tougher. I can kind of measure from the very back of it here, and then down to the keyboard using my tablet, and then I'll position that appropriately on cardboard. This may yield some errors and may require redoing or adjusting a few times. Like I said, there are some parts like the rounded front edges of the wood, or how long the flat part of the wood edge versus the slope down there is, and I guess I'll just have to use some guesswork to figure it out. But like I said, by comparing photos of my model and the original, I hope to gradually dial it in until it looks right. I don't need it to be to the millimeter accurate, I just need it to look correct-ish and have enough room for the inside stuff that needs to go in there. Anyway, that's sort of my tactic. It's not very sciencey. Now, there are some fairly scientific ways of doing this. A poster on VCFed who goes by the handle of 1944 GPW came up with a very sciencey way of deducing dimensionality. You can read the post in detail if you want to. Math was never my strong suit. But essentially it seems like he's using vectors to figure out some vanishing points, and then with a ruler he figures out the divergence angle of the side panel, which is 0.62 degrees out of parallel. The ruler mark extends past 1/4 inch of the projected rear vertical edge, and that makes the full half Nelson twist and right here and there, and then... did I mention I suck at math? But seriously, this guy is very, very smart. He's basically figured out how to use vectors and some math to calculate distances between various points. I really wish I knew how to do this, but I've got his results and can compare to mine and see what looks right on the camera after. Even though I can't quite understand how he's doing this, his logic does make perfect sense. I think he's come up with a far more accurate representation of the side profile of the case lid than I could. Wow. So first we'll start off with a box here to make a mock-up of the case lid. I've chosen fairly thick cardboard because, well, it was the only thing I had of right size. Normally I have tons of cardboard lying around from my business, but the weekend prior to starting this I chucked practically all of it. The main thing I struggled with was having something 21 inches wide. Apparently this was the only box that got me there. I'll have to use a side for the top here and one side for the chassis pan. And a little bit of measuring here, like I know what I'm doing. And here's a leftover scrap of the TV typewriter wood acting as a ruler. And we'll cut away here. Now here's the tricky bit, rolling up the end so it's curved into a C shape like the original. My plan was to roll the cardboard around something like this roller brush, but I'm finding out this cardboard is seriously strong. Yeah, I guess I'll just have to do my best here and then use some tape to hold it for now. Yeah, kind of ugly, but... Now, if you're wondering why I'm not cutting out the keyboard and cassette deck holes first, well, that's because I'm not very good with the maths, as I said, so to aid in getting the spacing correctly, I'm doing the curve first so that I can use my measurements of the photos to place the holes. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'll figure out how far from the edge of the curve the keyboard should be, and then I'll use the keyboard itself to mark off where the keys should pop out. And we'll pick up the pace here as I measure, draw lines, and cut her out. And we'll pop up the keyboard space here and see if I can get this cardboard cartilage to let go. Thank goodness the hole in the original isn't contoured to the shape of the keyboard. It's just a regular rectangular hole here. Yeah, a little test fit here, looking good. And now the cassette deck hole. In my previous box model, I had the keyboard and cassette deck level with one another. But from the photos of the original, I can see the opening from the tape deck is actually set down a couple inches from the top of the keyboard, sort of staggered like. I cut a bit too much out from the keyboard. On reflection, I needed to add a bit more distance between the two parts. Alright, out comes the cutout. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's see how things look with the two parts installed. This is where having a mutant third hand would be handy. Yeah, so that looks not too shabby at all. Now to put a bend in the top part here, I'm going to measure this out as best I can. Seems like we had about 6 inches or so from the top of the keyboard to the edge of the lid. That sort of accords with what 1944 GPW came up with on the VC Fed forum. He got about 6 inches and then a slight bend, and it looks like an inch or two before the top of the keyboard opening. I'm going to take my best guess here, and to put a slight bend in it, I'm going to use this piece of oak again. I think of all the parts I'm most intimidated by, the bending of the acrylic is the thing that really frightens me the most. You need to use heat for that, and it needs to be very evenly applied, and you need to do things very, very carefully, knowing if you make a mistake, yeah, it's going to cost you a few bucks. This bending I'm doing isn't super scientific. This is where the eyeballing comes in. I'll try a gentle bend first, and then just gradually increase it if I need to. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but I think this is coming out alright. Broadly, it looks correct. Certainly more correct than my first attempt. Now I'll form the base pan. I'm not 100% sure with the pictures. It seems like the pan could be 20 or 21 inches across in width and about 12 inches in depth. So yeah, I'm going to split the difference on the width and try 20.5 inches. Yeah, I feel more certain about the depth, so yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now. And then we're going to bend up the edges here just as they would be on the original. Yeah, this is some thick cardboard. Of course I chose the thickest cardboard possible. Although on the plus side, that's going to make it structurally more strong. Yeah, I might have been better off with a different material. I have this stuff called Plastruct, which I use for my model railroading. That might have been appropriate if I'd gotten some bigger sheets. But that stuff is pretty expensive, so, you know, cardboard is basically free. Yeah, maybe just thinner cardboard? Well, I think that looks alright, actually. Now, I'll just take the cover I made and I'll line it up here. Say, that doesn't look too bad. Yeah, not bad at all. Alright, now to make the wood sides. You know, cardboard is kind of wood, so yeah, that works, right? Based on what I could see in photos, I'm going to go with 12 inches for the flat bottom of the wood, the part that actually touches whatever table you put it on. And then I'm going to have a little bit of an overhang for the curved part at the front. I know at the very back it rises to about 5¼ inches, and it stays at that level for a little while before it begins to slope downwards. The trick though is figuring out where it begins to slope down, after being level at 5¼ inches and how long that slope is. There is a scientific way to do this, and 1944 GPW has sort of hit upon it, but as I mentioned, I'm a bit of a moron, and yeah, I just sort of guesstimated that the tall flat part goes for about 5 inches and the slope goes for about 6. It looks to me like the slope is longer. Whether that works or not, we will soon find out. And we'll just wrestle this piece of cardboard here, and here's our 5¼ inches of height. A quick slice. Now I'm going to use my mocked up lid as a reference. This might be a mistake. Based on available measurements, I'm guessing that the front part lowers to a height of about 2.5 inches or so, so here we go. Alright, we have our left side. Yeah, not too bad. Wish I'd had wider cardboard though. Hate having to bend that side piece. And I'm probably going to stack 2 or 3 of these together to get the right thickness. And I am regretting that divot in the side of my case lid. That was just sloppy cutting, but oh well. I think I need to lengthen this a bit at the back here. This is the beauty of cardboard, folks. Trim off too much and you can just tape some more back on. Yeah, that looks better. Now I'm going to cut a new panel for the other side here. And now to hook up the base pan to the side. I'm using the ruler here and scoring the cardboard to make it easier to fold up. I want an edge for the pan that looks sort of like what the original has. Yeah, still hard to fold. Ugh. Starting to take shape here. And a little test fit. Yeah, pretty good. I'm bending up the top a bit more here. In pictures it looks like the top sits more or less flush with the wood on top at the sides, at least at the back. And now for a little keyboard pose. Yeah, I mean it's hard to tell because the cardboard is brown and the acrylic top on the original is smoked, almost black, but still I think I'm pretty close overall. Yeah, that looks kind of right. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling like I'm on the right track here. I think the left side of the gap between the keyboard and the quote-unquote wood side is a little bit too much. Thankfully, that'll let me help fix the spot where I cut too deeply. Okay, now to build the keyboard support system. I don't really 100% know what I'm doing here, but I have a ruler and a knife, and I feel smart. Yeah, it looks kind of haphazard now, but hang in there. Yeah, that doesn't look quite wide enough. I need about 13.5 inches between these supports. I'll just move this one out a bit. Yeah, that's a bit better. I'm thinking I may have to extend the width of this thing a tiny bit. I'm not sure yet. Now, to check fitment, I went looking around my shop for a PCB that was the right size. That turned out to be kind of trickier than I thought. Almost everything I had was way smaller or way too big. But one board was almost 100% correct, being just a 1/4 inch shorter on one dimension than I needed. Yep, if you're going to mock something up, why not use an ultra stupid mega rare SWIT-PC GT6144 graphics card? I mean, this is probably just the rarest vintage graphics card ever, folks, and I'm using it like a cheap stand-in. But don't worry, I'm taking precautions for static off camera, and there's no rare ICs on this thing, it's all off-the-shelf TTL. Anyway, we can kind of see it's fitting in here. Yeah, I'm kind of concerned about that missing 1/4 inch though. Oh well, we'll see what we can do here. Alright, so now we'll see how the keyboard lines up. I'm going to make a back panel sort of like the one in the museum photos to hold the keyboard. It's not going to be quite correct as the one in the photos has a recessed area the keyboard sits in, but I can adjust for that mentally. Boy, I'm sure glad I started a YouTube channel so I can keep tabs on the hair thickness at the back of my head. Yeah, this is some fussy business with this keyboard mounting. I'm going to have to put some braces in here along the sides just to give it a bit more rigidity. And I'm also changing the angle a bit for the keyboard mounts, or rather just the height. Yeah, just to fit things together now. Yeah, I'll put it together here. Not bad. And I can't resist pressing a few keys here. Yeah, this is much closer than my first attempt. Well, as much as it pains me to do this, I have to take things apart here and try to dial this in a bit more. I've removed the lip on the left-hand side here, and now we'll reattach the keyboard post. And now to bring out the SPY tablet again and use my measuring technique to figure out roughly how wide the keyboard supports are. I'll speed things up here as I rework things. Yeah, that looks like a pretty good fitment if I do say so myself. The side pieces though, yeah, I think we need to fix that. I'll do some SPY tablet scaling here, and that'll give me the proper length of the part of the wood that touches the table. I'll also use it to figure out how long the flat part up top is, and how long the slope down to the front is. Figuring out how tall the front curved part of the wood is tricky. 1944 GPW from VCFed offered his estimations, and yeah, I'm inclined to agree we're pretty close, so yeah, it just sort of looks right. So I'll try that and see how it goes. Okay, so having gotten this far, I want to try and fix the side panels, the stand-ins for the wood sides, because I think with the aid of my tablet scaling technique, I'm a bit better able to judge the dimensions and angles of things. And I have to say, as I'm cutting into it here, it's just looking a lot more right. Oh yeah, I think that side looks a lot better. Let's do the other side. In a weird way, this is really starting to resemble the original in my mind. Maybe I'm just deliriously tired here, but yeah, this kind of does feel right. I've also extended the floor pan out a bit here as I realized I didn't have quite enough space for the motherboard as it was. So I've given the width an extra ½ inch, which gets us to just over 21 inches, and that seems to be doing the trick. And we'll apply full throttle again here. Yeah, I think this is coming out pretty good. I'm taking some beauty shots here from similar angles to photos of the real machine. I'll compare them later and see if things look right. Okay, so now just to finish things up, I'm going to cut some additional side pieces, and that's going to allow me to thicken up the wood sides to more like what they should be in real life. And then I'll bond them together with tape. Yeah, this is kind of looking like a thing, isn't it? Alright, and here's our lid. Did I mention I painted it previously? I did. I was going to film it too. It's too bad I didn't press the record button. Anyway, yeah, as this thing comes together, I'm feeling more and more like I'm on the right track. A final touch is I'm going to recreate, sort of, the support structure at the back here. Based on my scaling, it appears to be about a ½ inch on each side of the L shape. Yeah, that ought to do it. Now to enhance the realism, a bit of paint. I'm just using acrylic here. I used spray paint on the previous model, and while it does yield a nice, flat, smooth finish, in this case I didn't want to deal with respirators and overspray. This model is just about getting the feel for the original and figuring out how the original chassis went together. Painting it with similar colors just helps with the visualization. It doesn't need to be perfect in texture. Except on the sides, for some reason I decided to get a little bit fancy. I started out with a very dark shaded brown and I wasn't happy with it, so I decided to go up to a lighter shade. And that's when I sort of remembered from art class creating a sort of wood grain effect by painting on a lighter color on top of the darker color using a slightly dry brush. And yeah, I think this is actually starting to look like wood a little bit. Alright, that's it for the paint, I think. And now over to my non-narrated self to finish up. So yeah, here it is. I'm pretty satisfied with how this came out, actually. Some people will say to me, well, why didn't you throw it into CAD design or something and just figure it out that way. But I just, you know how your mind works, right? And for me, I need to see something visual in order to really understand what I'm looking at. Putting it on a computer, it just doesn't give me the clarity that something like this does. With this, I can physically look at it and go, okay, this is gonna fit, that's gonna fit. And it's not even about the physical model itself. It's about the process of building it. It's like, okay, I needed to make this high and that this wide. That's all things that get kind of tracked into my brain, and then I know when I go to do the final product, okay, these are the things that I ran into when I was building this one. Still though, I think this looks pretty amazing considering it's just a cheapo box model. I wish the tape wasn't everywhere, but you know, knowing that I may have to take it apart yet again in order to tweak a few things, it's just easier with tape. With glue, you know, you start pulling things apart and the cardboard rips, and then it starts becoming harder and harder to put together. I don't know why I went overboard and made this look like wood. I got a little bit carried away there, but yeah, that's my artistic side. And indeed, you know, a big thing about this for me is the art of it, you know, trying to replicate what someone else did. And then this is the back here. I sort of replicated the back plate that still exists. I believe the original probably had a full back plate that covered everything, and I think that piece just got lost because you can see the little holes in the bar up here where they would have had something screwed in. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going on there. But yeah, it's a shame that I'm gonna have to basically toss this thing once I'm done with it. I don't have another keyboard that really fits here. And I don't know what I would do with it anyway, just sitting around. It'd be just one more thing taking up space. But yeah, for now it's here. I'll lift the lid off. You know, the lid, I don't know if the profile really matches exactly what the original looks like, but I think it's fairly close. I feel like this is probably a bit more, like the radius of it is a little bit more tight than that. But, you know, that's gonna be one of the tricky parts. I'm just gonna have to experiment expensively in order to figure out what works. Hopefully it's not gonna take too many expensive pieces of acrylic to get it right. Internally, I mean, to me, it looks pretty much like what the other one does. There's a couple little things I've noticed, like the keyboard over here is kind of sitting right on the edge, and I think the way it's supposed to be is there's a plate underneath here and it's indented so that the keyboard PCB sits flush with the edge, and then the edge bolts to either side. But that could just be the cardboard flexing a little bit. The cassette deck is exactly correct. We know that because I've looked at the photographs extensively, and it's got all the same, even the little feet on the bottom there and these things on the side and the placement of the motor, it's basically the exact same tape drive, it's just a different brand. And then the back here, we've got my GT6144 standing in for the motherboard. There's a little bit of space on either side, so that's great because the motherboard is actually about, I think it's about 1/4 to 1/2 inch longer. It's the same width as this board though. And then I've got this little transformer standing in for the power supply. Still not sure what I'm gonna put there, but I'm tempted to just, you know, if I could find the design of the original one, I'd probably do the original, but because we don't know anything about that, I'm probably going to be tempted to go with a modern switching power supply just because it has greater fault tolerance, and you know, hopefully it'll shut down if there's a short somewhere, which knowing me and my building abilities probably will be. But yeah, I think everything in there more or less looks correct. Yeah, I think overall I'm pretty satisfied with this. I think it gets pretty darn close to the look and feel of the original. Of course, I'd love to put it next to the original just to verify, but yeah, I think it looks right. The only thing that kind of stands out a little bit to me is I think the keyboard needs to tilt more towards the camera here at the top. I think the angle is a little bit sharper because when I look at the pictures of it, it looks like it's kind of facing into the camera rather than being away, like it's flat. So I might have to adjust that a little bit. But yeah, that's basically it for this part of the project. The next parts will be basically just collecting pieces. I'll probably have to inventory what I have and then figure out what I need. And then, yeah, starting to work on basically the motherboard, and then setting it up so that hopefully I can kind of homebrew it and produce one of my own. And then, yeah, from there, it's just going to be the various other steps of setting it all up and testing it out and trying to fix problems and seeing if we can make it run. But yeah, this is probably the last video on this for a little while anyway, because it's going to take some time to find those parts. So in the interim, we'll be back to other videos about other stuff. And we have a few coming up. I've got a whole pile of IDE hard drives I bought that I'm going to go through and see if they're running. I've got a 386 based digital sign that I want to show off, which is really cool because it's like a really expensive light bright. And then just some other projects that I have on the go. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you very soon.